They're fine for me. So one of the things that John was talking about in the opening slides was kind of giving back to the community here with our presentations and hoping that you guys can walk away with some knowledge and implement it into the places that you work as well. Now, nothing that I'm talking about tonight, I'm not going to teach you tips and tricks on how to do things, but I'll teach you some of the tips and tricks that I use in social engineering and how you can use those to implement into your user education to help teach your people on how to spot me. And that's the important thing, is being able to stop me from doing the bad things that I want to do inside of your company. Go. So if you haven't met me before, hi, I'm Robbie. Here's some of the contact information for me. So I've had 7+ years in information security. I've done all kinds of stuff working with Rapid7, everything from small organizations to large organizations, internals, externals. My favorite stuff to do, though, is social engineering. I gave a version of this talk, or a portion of this talk, at another conference not too long ago in Rhode Island that was dedicated to social engineering. Super awesome conference. It's going to be back around next year. It's called Layer 8. If you get a chance to check it out, I recommend it. So this is a little excerpt from that presentation as well. So I'm going to skip over that because that didn't need to be in there. I'm wondering if this is actually the right version of this. Okay, yeah, it is. All right. Sorry about that. Like I said, this was pulled out of an other presentation, so make sure it's the right one. So story time. I want to talk about phishing first off, and then go into some physical stuff. So a story about phishing that I've performed. I had an engagement where I was supposed to phish company. Goal was to get whatever I could get. If I could get internal access, I can get internal access. And take that as far as I wanted to. It was pretty basic, simple. Here's 100 users, phish them and see how good they are. So register a domain, one character off from the organization that I'm attacking. They're not doing any kind of filtering on the front end, so people actually clicking on my link works very successfully. The email that I drafted up for them is basically, hey, we're moving to a new version of Outlook. We have this Outlook web access now, and here's a login page. You need to confirm that you have access to it, or your account's going to be shut off in a week. You know, put a time frame in there. And I scraped their Outlook web access and just made it a login page. Into the story, I ended up with like 17 creds from people trying to log in. Take those 17 creds, log into their VPNs or log into their email, and just start pillaging from there. So phishing can be very successful at times. One of the things that another coworker and I did is we started wondering about phishing attacks that we've done at Rapid7. You know, what is working for us? What are our pen testers doing, and how successful are they with these different scenarios? So we took all of the previous reports. We took a sampling of 60 reports from 2015 to 2018 and started dissecting them and going through looking for different things. And some of those data points were like, was OSINT performed? What kind of pretext were they using? All kinds of stuff, really. We wanted to dissect that information. Go. So one of the first things that we looked at was OSINT performed? If you don't know what OSINT is, it's open source intelligence gathering. Basically scraping the internet and trying to find out as much information about an organization and their employees as possible without actually interacting with the organization. So we're looking at things like LinkedIn, we're looking at Facebook, we're looking at Twitter, we're looking at data.com, we're looking at all these different resources that pull information for us. But we wanted to ask the very basic question in the beginning, was OSINT performed? And interestingly enough, we had 3 answers. It was yes, no, and not applicable, and that go. that it didn't move. Oh, well, that's supposed to do things. All right. Anyways, the not applicable and the no's were interesting. They stood out the most. And what it really turned out to be with those no's and not applicables was that customers were providing information to us. They were saying, here's a list of targets to go after. Will you actually animate? I'm guessing not. It must be the difference between Mac and Windows. All right, so after looking at OSINT, we wanted to dig into the pretexts and get an understanding of what kind of pretext people were using and what their objectives were. And overarchingly, we found that harvesting credentials was the primary drive for our phishing emails. We want credentials. We had some customers that wanted to know if people were going to click on links. So it was very generic landing page. And then we also saw a small tick for payloads, people actually delivering some kind of malicious payload for an employee to execute. And then there was a small bit that was both harvesting credentials and executing payloads. Some customers also wanted to know if we sent just a phishing email to their organization, to their employees, could we exfiltrate or gain access to sensitive information? And then the last thing I wanted to know out of all of these pretexts were our people using SMB image tags. And if you don't know what those are, I'll touch on them a little bit later because it's an important thing to be aware of and looking out for when you're scraping your emails, your incoming email, and making sure that they're not doing this kind of thing. Because it's the kind of thing that I do, for good reason. So I wanted to take a look at a pretext that we have that is pretty good. And we're going to kind of dissect it and go through what works with it and what doesn't work with it, and kind of point out some of these things. So this is probably really hard to read, and that's all right. I can give you the overarching point of it. There was a recent cyber attack, and information security is saying, we need you to do a thing for us. You need to go to this website and do this thing for us. And if you don't do it within this time frame, then your account's going to be locked out. You can see that's a trend we do. Being pen testers and on engagements, we are time boxed. We have sometimes a week, sometimes more, sometimes less to perform our engagements. So we put time boxes around people to see if they'll do things for us quickly, which is actually one of the things that I like about this pretext is it has that. The text inside of it says you must do this immediately, or your account's going to be locked out essentially. So I also liked that there were some instructions to go along with what they wanted to do for the pretext, and it had something to do with something that's personal to us as well, with being our account. You don't want your account locked out, so you need to take care of this. Most employees that would see it and be like, all right, I got a thing I have to do. So let's look at the things that don't work. And this is a little bit longer, so I don't like not being able to move, but I'll try to read it from here. If you can see it or not, the sending email for this phishing is I gotta see it, sorry. Yeah. It's ITSec_no reply. And I don't know any of you, but any organization I've worked at, we've never used a corporate email that had no reply as part of the account. That's a little bit of a giveaway to me. Another thing I don't like about it is it's very lengthy. If I got this in my email, I might look at it and be like, yeah, I'll check that out later. I got more important things to do. And then the last thing that I didn't like about it was the salutation at the end. It's sincerely corporate ITSec is very bland, not really targeted towards the actual organization. There's no customization with it. like making it feel like it would come from a corporate account or be within this organization. All right, so now touching on one of the things that I think you should definitely be looking for, because I always recommend that us as pen testers do these things, because it gets you credentials, and that's the thing that I want as well. So inside of an HTML email, if you guys aren't aware, you can use image source equals and point it at file : / your server IP, some JPEG, PNG, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you have an SMB server listening on your system that you're pointing to, when a Windows box sees this email or sees that image tag, it will try to do an authentication with the system to pull down that image file. And when it does that authentication, we capture credentials. So if you're not aware of something like this, it's definitely something you should be looking at inside of your incoming email to see if this is happening. So if they are, then it's probably a phishing email, and well, people are going to be harvesting your credentials. So another story, catching my entries. Now we're going to kind of move into the actual physical stuff. So I got back not too recently from an engagement where the organization had me doing a social engineering, physical social engineering, going on site and trying to talk my way into some buildings. With it came along some phishing emails as well. So I decided to leverage my phishing emails to gain access inside the building. That made sense to me. My phishing emails were for one purpose only, and it was to cause havoc. My point to go on site, my pretext to go on site was going to be, hey, you guys got hit by this phishing thing. I'm part of incident response from corporate. I'm here to do some triage. I need access to all of your things. Which I thought that would work really well because I had to gain access to some pretty highly secure areas, and I thought that would work. However, the customer got a little annoyed with my tactics for my phishing emails, so they kind of shut that down. And moral of the story was I didn't need to go through all of the trouble of all these phishing emails, because in the end of the day, I gained access to their building with a $10 box of donuts. So it's not always how crafty are these attacks. It's watching for the easy things, right? I showed up to their building with a box of donuts in hand. One of their employees came up behind me and badged into the door, and I asked him, hey, you work for this company? He said, yes. I was like, cool, I got donuts. He's like, cool, come, follow me. I like donuts. We walk through the building, and we get to their office area. I walk past their office area, and he stopped me. He's like, no, bro, door over here. Boop, donuts, bring them. So I walked in, and I stood there for a second looking around like, okay, I'm inside now, where do I go? And as I'm looking around, I noticed there's a break room over there. And he stops, he's like, are you looking for someone? I was like, oh, no, I just got delivered these donuts. And I dashed away over to their break area, tossed them on a desk, and then shuffled off into a conference room. And I hid in the conference room for a while, and nobody confronted me. So, yeah, that was pretty bad on his part. He didn't validate me. He didn't have me sign in after I gained access into the building.
Give him a donut?
So actually, funny part of that story, I stayed, seeing how my rules of engagement changed midway through the engagement, the customer told me, okay, you can go back on site, but don't touch anything if you gain access. We don't think you're going to, but if you do, don't touch anything, reach out to us. I tried reaching out to them, email, text, phone, couldn't get a hold of them, and I stayed in that conference room for like 15, 20 minutes. It had a glass window, so people walking past saw me in there, and nobody confronted me. And I was just hanging out like, well, I can't get a hold of anyone, so I'm just going to go start talking to people. So I walked out and just started talking to people, and everybody that passed me while I was in their break room was like, hey man, there's donuts, you guys should have some, I brought them for you. make sure you eat them because your company's paying for them. And these two guys were trying to make me coffee the entire time, which was funny. But anyways, so it doesn't have to be crafty for people to gain access, but you need to make sure that employees are following proper process, and that's what failed for them. The employee that just let me into the building, like, didn't validate that I was a donut delivery guy thing. I don't know who delivers donuts, right? He didn't validate me in any form, and when I walked inside of his office after he let me in, he didn't have me sign in, and he didn't make sure that I left afterwards as well. So, I mean, there's multiple failures there. Like, he didn't make sure that I wasn't a bad guy. So that's where they failed there. But, jumping back in time, let's talk about that phishing email I sent. So, this phishing email was, like I said, nothing fancy. I have a real large repository of fake emails or emails that I receive, and I say, hey, wow, that'd make a really good phishing email. So I save them. And one of them I had received at one point in time was from a proof point for a secure message. So I reuse it, and I sent it to the organization. So with this one also, the organization owned like every TDL for region per region. So it was like company name.us, AU, EU, Asia, all of them, except for DE. They didn't own DE, so I own DE, and I found someone who worked for their company inside of, that's Russia, right? So I found someone who worked there. I created that person a mailbox. Using their name, and I sent my phishing email from this DE domain, which, looking at the logs afterwards, was really funny because they were internally like, hey, I think someone's abusing DE. Wait, we don't owe DE. Oh, crap. But there's nothing fancy. So it's got all of the, you can't see it in this rendering, but those two top images are real images for the organization and proof point. And it's the same text from a proof point because I keep those things, and a couple of click here links that I crafted together to point to a login landing page that was registered at that DE domain. So that was that phishing email, and I was really surprised. So I had 50 people to send this to. 10 out of that 50 people in 6 hours, 10 people opened it, 10 people clicked the link. 2 people logged into my portal. One of them was without credentials. He didn't provide anything. He just clicked the login button to see what happened. My login portal just looped. So if you logged in, it just spit you back out to the login page again. But one person submitted 2 sets of credentials. And I was able to access both external and internal things with their credentials, which was what the customer didn't like. But anyways, moving on. With physical stuff, it can be tricky to catch people unless your employees understand process and procedures, and you have those in place for people that do not work for the organization to gain access. So, Master of Disguise, I don't dress in anything fancy. In fact, I think that's the same shirt that this is. Embarrassing. No, so that was actually what I was wearing when I gained access in that last story. You can see for donut delivery person thing, that doesn't look like a person that would deliver donuts. I guess, like, I didn't have any donut shop branded shirts or anything. I don't know, maybe it was like, what is it, Uber Eats maybe? I don't know. And this other one, that was actually from my very first social. I was doing a gig for an organization that was in the middle of BFE. But pretext to that was we were supposed to do an external assessment of each of these little locations around the country. And I figured out who their hosting provider was during that portion of the engagement. So I showed up on site and said, hey, I'm with your ISP. You're having issues with network stuff and I need to fix it. So can I have access to your networking closet? Which they gave me access to their networking closet because I was wearing a yellow vest. I had no branding for the ISP. I had nothing like, I was wearing a yellow vest and carrying a clipboard. That was it. So these are the kind of things that I dress like and I do during my physical assessments. I have given other talks before about performing SE engagements. One of the things that I always said during those presentations was, if you're making props for your engagement, just remember it never has to be perfect. It only has to be good enough. Because people don't validate things all the way through. If you give them a line of bullshit to go along with what you're doing, they seem to fall for it pretty well, or they're willing to at least accept it. I was doing an engagement for another organization, found out that the building they were in was Energy Star compliant. So I was an Energy Star compliance officer. I dressed like this, and I had a lanyard with a little pocket in it, and before I showed up on site, I went to the hotel printer and printed off a fake badge that looked like I was an Energy Star compliance officer on a piece of paper and put it in the sleeve. And when I was talking to a lady trying to gain access, she was holding my badge, staring at it, looking at both sides. On the other side, I had a hotel room key in it, just to give it weight. That was it. And she was looking at it and flipping it over and talking to me, and I was just giving her all kinds of junk about Energy Star compliance stuff, like talking energy. I don't know anything about it, but I guess I pulled it off enough because they let me inside, and I walked around their building looking at outlets and stuff. So these are the things that I do. I'm hoping that telling you guys about what I do during my SE engagements, the kind of things that I dress like and how weak they kind of are sometimes, I'm still able to gain access, that you're able to implement some of these things into your education and develop some kind of policies and procedures around letting people in to help secure your office buildings, your satellite sites, and all of those. The most difficult engagements I have are typically banks and mainly bank branches, which is a good thing because they usually require multiple steps to be performed before they'll let someone in. However, that doesn't always stop you because I've been inside of bank vaults before after pulling a lot of strings and just talking to people and giving them a really nice smile. I'm able to gain access to bank networking closets, passing by a vault, being inside a vault to do stuff, which isn't good. Not good at all. On that engagement, I dropped a wireless device and came back and sat in a coffee shop next door and was able to do everything on their internal network that I wanted to because I dropped a wireless box there. No one knew about it. So it's not foolproof, but still having some kind of policies and procedures to validate who's trying to gain access and also what to do with that person after you let them inside of the building. One of the things that I like to see is if they do let me inside of a building, that they have someone that walks around with you to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. Having an escort is a great thing. The Energy Star one, I was able to gain access, but I had a escort. So one of the building security guards walked around with me. He let me into all of their electrical closets. They got lots of pictures of some maps and stuff inside of there. And there's a couple times I was able to shut a door and be in there all alone. They even let me down near their entire building generator, which I'm sure I could have shut off the power, but he would have probably punched me in the face. So take it as it is. But I was able to gain access, and I had an escort, which was a good thing. And if someone is detected doing some malicious stuff inside of a building, knowing what to do with them then as well. So I've been confronted during engagements, and people just let me go. I give them my get out of jail free card, they read it, and I say, okay, that makes sense. I tell them, hey, it's an engagement, don't tell anyone else, because you'll spoil the engagement, let's see who else falls for this. And they say, right on, have fun. I've also had people read it, and we have contact information on our get out of jail free cards, so they call the point of contact from their office line to their office line and not following what's on our paper, because that's an important step as well. And then handing me off to that security person inside of their organization and following those procedures. That's an important thing as well. I mean, me being able to get in and someone just taking a piece of paper and say, cool, good on you, have fun, enjoy doing your bad stuff isn't good. So those are my recommendations and just some insight into what I do for my engagements. And from there, I think we are wrapping it up. So to go along with the past presentation, which I got to give mad props to Emily St. Pierre. She was the coworker I did this last presentation with. She helped to develop, or she mainly created a bunch of phishing pretexts that you can grab from her GitHub. And then if you want slides from that last presentation, it was at Rhode Island Social Engineer Rhode Island conference. I think it's Layer 8 now. So look that one up. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Any questions?
Yeah. Tell us if you were unsuccessful. Let's just narrow down. You said you're dealing with small and medium businesses and large businesses. Let's talk about small and medium businesses. Have you been unsuccessful to gain physical access to credit? Question number one. And second question, about once you are inside, and somebody escorting, and you said it was one. Don't you think that escorting, even if they validated you're legally supposed to be, but not an employee without. Don't you think that any serviceman should still be escorted and continuously somebody from the company should be around and confirming that the person is doing what he or she is supposed to do. This is my question.
Yeah, sure. So if anyone didn't hear the questions, they were, have I ever failed when gaining access to, we'll say, small, medium businesses? And then also, if someone is being escorted around a facility, being some kind of vendor or whatnot, should they always have an escort around them? So, do I understand that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So small, medium businesses, I've not done a whole lot of small organizations. I've done a few mediums, and everything that's coming to mind, I can't think of one that I failed at. Typically, those small to mediums don't have the user education. They don't have those policies and procedures in place. So, no, I can't think of any of the ones that I've performed that I've failed at. And yes, I think that if someone is a vendor or anyone like that that has access to your building should have an escort with them to monitor what they're doing. Even if I have an escort that leads me to a place and leaves me inside of a place, I have plenty of time to do all kinds of bad stuff. I carry in my bag a little wireless router that I was alluding to earlier. Once I plug it into the network, it does a lot of bad things automatically. And then gives me remote access as well. So that takes all of less than a minute to plug in, maybe a minute if I'm hiding it really well. So yeah, escort all the time for vendors and stuff like that. I personally am paranoid and don't trust people, so that's what I would do. Yep. I saw one over in this direction.
Do you have any data or stats
I personally do not. Part of Rapid7 is an incident response, so they might have some kind of information. I can try to dig something up if you're really